more of a business feel, and I had to wrap my head around that. And
Sure.
that's something that I wasn't prepared for, I would say mentally, kind of going in. I was like, oh, I'm just going to play for Georgia Southern and, have a good old time and not think anything of it. And when I got there, I was like, oh, snap.
Today on the show, I'm talking with former football player and graduate of Carson Newman University in East Tennessee. Emmanuel Orange is up next. Welcome back to the Fifth Quarter Podcast. I'm your host, Sandy Adams, and this is where we dive deep into the world of sports, talking with retired athletes, current athletes, and everyone that helps make the sports world great. A quick reminder, if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the show. You can find us on Apple, Spotify, Audible, YouTube, and wherever you listen to podcasts. And hey, if you love what you hear, take a screenshot of your favorite episode and share it on Instagram stories. Tag us at 5THQRT Podcast so more folks can discover these stories. Now, grab your iced tea or your coffee. Get ready to be motivated and inspired because this is where the real stories are told. He was 8 years old when he left Haiti and stepped into a new life in the United States. A new language, a new culture, and a world that didn't always understand him. But football became his translator. On the field, he found purpose, belonging, and power. From Naples High School in Florida to leading as a team captain at Carson Newman College in East Tennessee, Emmanuel Orange built a career defined by discipline and resilience. A conference champion, a first-generation college graduate, and now a leader in the medical sales industry. His story is about more than sport. It's about transformation. I couldn't be more excited to welcome to the show Emmanuel Orange.
Hey, Cindy, thank you for having me.
You are quite welcome. I always like to tell people how I actually found you on LinkedIn. A mutual connection, Marcus Johnson, and I did not write down what podcast episode I interviewed Marcus back last fall at some point, and I saw you post on something, and I reached out to you. And I use LinkedIn, as I was saying before we started. I use LinkedIn a lot to get some of my guests, so it's always nice to put a face to a name, and I'm excited about your story, and let's get started.
Absolutely.
So take us back. As I said, you immigrated from Haiti. Take us back to when you were 8 years old, before you came over here. What were your thoughts at that time about your future? Or as
Yeah.
much as an 8-year old can have
You
thoughts
can
about the
understand,
future. Yeah,
right? Yeah.
yeah.
No, I mean, I definitely thought I was just going along for the ride, right? I mean, I think I was going along for the ride. My mom was pregnant at the time with my sister. I remember that vividly. And it was me and my brother. And then my dad had stayed back. So we had family who kind of had already settled in Naples in the early
Okay.
90s. So we had a community already kind of based here. So, but yeah, it was, you're young and you're trying to figure things out. It's not till you're trying to make sense of the situation as you're growing up. You're like, okay, well, I don't speak the language. I don't, I'm not, you're trying to fit in, right? And so, like I said, it's a lot of humble beginnings and a lot of, struggles, early struggles. But as you kind of get adapted to the Western culture and you find out, hey, this is the way of life and this is what it's going to take to kind of be successful in your own realm, you quickly kind of find a way to kind of write your own American dream. So that's kind of what I did.
Okay, so as an 8-year-old,
Yeah.
what did you want to be when you grew up?
Yeah, I was always passionate about business. I think, from an early, I
Really?
think, watching my parents. So my mom was a stay-at-home mom. My dad went out to work in Haiti, of course. And I kind of remember my mom was a, hustler. She kind of sold like outside of like she kind of had her own little shop and her own little thing going on. But I was always passionate about just business. I think way before even football came into play, I wanted to kind of want to be, I was very entrepreneurial, and I always seen myself, running a company or being in some type of realm of business. That's for sure.
That's interesting from an 8-year-old's perspective.
Yeah.
Because, I've taught a lot of job search classes for mid-level professionals with
Yeah.
engineers, a lot of them. And I always ask that question because I always want to reconnect people to who they were when they were little.
Yeah.
and very few would say business.
Business. Yeah.
Yeah, very few, very few.
Yeah.
So when did you discover football? Was it before you came to the US or afterwards?
No, I mean, yeah, afterwards, right? And I think thankful for me, like I had cousins, of course, who,
Right.
aunts and, and they kind of took on that path, football and really ended up being very successful. I had cousins who went to Wake Forest and West Virginia. And so, like I said, I had a bloodline of like, I guess, of people that came before me who kind of just, really painted that picture. And I remember, I think, around my neighborhood, I really loved soccer growing up, because that's that's the kind of
Yes.
that's our sport, in Haiti. And I remember in the neighborhood I grew up in, I was like, man, these kids are not playing soccer. They're kicking the ball, they're catching a ball. Like, what is this? And quickly find out it was a sport of football. And, of course, you get 9, 10, 11, 12, and you start playing for like a Pop Warner team and don't know what I'm doing and had to kind of adapt to the Western culture as I was stating. But, you quickly find out that, you got to get in where you fit in. And, that's what the kids were doing in my neighborhood. So I quickly adapted and, I became somewhat good at it in a sense. So it all worked out.
So you talk about adjusting to life in the US.
Yeah.
So what was one of the struggles as a child coming into the school system and having to adjust? Because you said you spoke Creole and what was the other one?
French. Yeah.
French.
French. Yeah.
Uh, and there was, did you know English at all before you came here?
Very little,
And I'm going to
very
tell
little.
you, I've talked to a lot of people that have had English as their first language and not. You do not have, one, you don't have an accent, but two, you talk like English is your first language,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
because English is like one of the hardest languages to learn.
Oh, very. Yeah. It's very hard. Yeah.
So, I love that. So, what were some of those issues that you kind of faced as a child trying to fit in?
Yeah, of course, there's definitely a language barrier, right? And then, I think, when you're young, you're trying to find, hey, like, what are the cool kids doing? I definitely
Yeah,
didn't dress cool, then adjust to that cool thing. I remember like I used to dress in like, I think, man, I probably came with like one pair of shoes and, dress shirts. So I was very always buttoned up, but the kids were, they had jerseys on and, and so that was an adjustment period, right? I remember the first time I got my first name brand shoes. I mean, which was a big deal, right?
yeah,
Fifth
right,
grade, they were
right,
Tracy McGrady threes. I still remember them to, like, to the rest of, trying to adapt to not only the language, but the style and be hip and be cool. Like my parents used to cut my hair, right? For like
right.
forever. And I remember the first time I was like, Dad, all the kids are going to the barber shop to get their hair cut. I don't want you to do my hair anymore. I don't want you to do my haircut anymore. It's not cool enough. So I mean, it was that, right? It was just
Sure.
trying to fit in, trying to be cool, and trying to get in with the cool kids. And you quickly realize that, hey, being different is cool. Being different is cool. And throughout time, I kind of found I kind of settled into the Western culture, as they say,
Right.
and yeah, and everything worked out.
So, football, when did it become a sport that you wanted to play in school?
Yeah, yeah. It started, I mean, of course, high school, because you start, definitely high school.
Right.
High school, I kind of noticed, and then I had cousins who had came before me at Naples High School, probably like three or four cousins who were, very successful.
So you already
And
had that roadmap
map,
of
yeah.
yeah, of kind of okay, gotcha.
Yeah, yeah. So I kind of already had that kind of roadmap. I remember when I came in as a freshman, it was me and my other friend, like growing up in the same neighborhood, and I was little orange. I was little orange back then, and because all my cousins were big oranges,
Right.
and kind of moved on and did their thing. So I kind of had huge, I guess, shoes to fill.
Right.
And then as time progresses on, and your neighborhood, like in the neighborhood I grew up in, and Naples is a very affluent
Hmm.
city, right? It's a very affluent city. And so I seen a lot of things. I seen a lot of things growing up as an immigrant. I'm like, okay, hey, like one day I want to have a big house. I want to be able
Right.
to do this for my parents. I want to be able to go vacation or whatever. So there's a lot of motivation around it. But if you're within a
Right.
community where you're sheltered from these things and you're not exposed to it, it could kind of be harder. You could kind of be forgotten about. So, within my neighborhood, it was, we didn't have any successful businessmen. There was, the
Right.
drugs, crime, and it's hard to believe like, hey, these things were going on in, beautiful old Naples. But, within a community, like that's all until so
Sure.
football was kind of like my escape route.
Yeah.
And back then it was like, hey, you can go to college. I was like, oh, you can go to college playing this sport? I had no
Right.
idea, right? I mean, my parents were not gonna be able to fund me to do that. So, it was a way for me to get free education further on my career. And then as time kind of went on, it was like, okay, well, hey, now you're getting offers from these schools. Hey, this is a real possibility. You can kind of go ahead and do this, and then the professional stuff and kind of later on down the line. But yeah, so that was the approach.
So in high school, you were playing for Naples High School.
Yep.
Did you start getting recruited for colleges?
Yeah.
At what age or what grade level?
So it was like 10th, 11th year. So as you kind of go into that sophomore, junior year, I
Mhm.
mean, you start getting like the Vanderbilt, Syracuse, um, Georgia Southern was, of course, up there. That's what I kind of went with. But I had no idea within that process. Like, I was, like there was nobody like to kind of, even though my cousins had kind of went on and did their
Right.
thing, like within my household, like I remember like ACT, like my parents still, they don't even know like I took a ACT or SAT, like so those things then, those things like you kind of have to figure as a first generation college student, especially as an
Right.
immigrant, there's a lot of things that as a self-starter, you kind of just have to figure out life. And so a lot of things I kind of did on my own. And I remember like, I had, friends, their parents were taking them to camps, getting
Right.
exposure. So it was one of those things that I was like, oh, okay, I'm just gonna do it and see where it goes. So it's not something I took seriously till the end, but I'm glad it worked out, definitely the way it did.
So let's talk about your senior year in high school.
Yeah.
And at that point, had you already committed to Georgia Southern?
I think I committed to Georgia Southern really at the end. I think it was between Toledo. Toledo had offered from Ohio, and I was like, "Where the hell's Toledo? Where the hell's Toledo, Ohio?" It's funny now because I have a
It's
customer.
okay.
Yeah, I have a customer who went to Toledo, Ohio Rockets, and we have that conversation every time, and I feel some type of commonality now that I'm able to talk about it. But that was my
Sure.
very first offer. Toledo, Ohio Rockets offered me, and I remember I was talking to the recruiter. I'm like, there's no way I'm going to Ohio. I don't even know where it is. I don't even know
It's
where it is.
cold.
It's cold, right? And being sick, what, 17, 18 at the time, then even, I kind of wanted to stay close to Florida,
Sure.
Florida,
Sure.
and it was Georgia, Florida was kind of like that. It was like, okay, I'll just pick Georgia Southern, not because of academics, not because of the best whatever. It was like, hey, it's close. I can go home whenever,
Right.
if I feel like it. And so I committed to Georgia Southern out of high school.
So what were your thoughts as a senior in high school? You've committed. What's your thoughts about what you're going to do after college? Did you have any thoughts?
No, it was that pressure of just like, hey, go pro, right? Like, hey,
Right.
like, hey, you're gonna play college football and then you're gonna go pro. And that was pretty much people's aspirations, like I've
It
never,
is.
yeah, I didn't have that really aspiration of going pro. Like if it happened, it would have been great, right? But it wasn't one of those things that I was like, hey, as time continues and you're kind of getting closer and closer, it's kind of like a promotion. You're like, okay, well, hey, people see me as a leader. Well,
Right.
maybe I should step into this and be, and lead the team or whatever. So football is kind of the same. As time kind of progressed on, you're like, okay, hey, maybe I do got a shot at this. I should pursue this. And
Right.
then it went from
Right.
there.
So you commit to Georgia Southern
Yeah.
and you go to Georgia Southern. You're a
Yeah.
freshman on campus. What was the changes that you had to go through um, before we get into what happened that
Yeah.
freshman year? But
Yeah.
let's talk about like what was the culture change like for you from high school to college? Because for
Yeah.
a lot of people I've had on the show, they talk about no matter where they came from,
Right.
they talk about the difference between high school and college and just all the changes that suddenly you're just on a different plateau.
Right. Yeah. No, like you quickly find out that it's actually a different, like it's a business, right? College,
Yeah,
I mean, college is a business,
it
aside
is.
from high school. High school, you play for fun and there's a lot of camaraderie and you find out that, hey, like, you know, your coach is probably going to replace you with another talent every year, right? So it became more of a business feel, and I had to wrap my head around that. And
Sure.
that's something that I wasn't prepared for, I would say mentally, kind of going in. I was like, oh, I'm just going to play for Georgia Southern and have a good old time and not think anything of it. And when I got there, I was like, oh snap, like I'm away from my parents for the first time. I've never been away from my parents ever.
Right.
So that took, that was an adjustment period. I've never been away from my parents for more than like 2, 3 days, 2, 3 days, 2, 3 days, if that. So yeah, everything was an adjustment period. Georgia itself, South
Yeah,
Georgia itself
it
was an
is.
adjustment period. But like I said, I quickly, you get homesick, you get
Yes,
homesick. You're
you
like,
do.
oh man, and you kind of have to get adjusted to a schedule, right? I mean, you're going to school, you're going home, and I have study hall, I have weight training, I have
Right.
things to tend to. And so like I said, it became, but it really, if I look at my professional career now, a lot of these things had paid, dividends to my career because I'm very structured in the way that I do things. And so I was always on a schedule. So as much as it was a, negative back in the day, it really turned into a positive later on.
A lot of athletes say that. They talk about how that the shock of you're in a college now and nobody's like going to make you do like you have to
Yeah,
be responsible for yourself,
absolutely.
and you either learn to develop that discipline in that schedule
Yeah,
or you just don't and you
right,
go home.
right.
There's one or the other. So now let's talk about you went there to play football. Let's talk about that freshman year,
Yeah.
and your season there.
Yeah. So freshman year and in high school, you're the man. I mean, high school, you're the man of many, right? But in college, you quickly figured out, hey, everybody's the man, right? I mean, everybody's the
Yes.
man, and yeah, everybody's the man. So
And
that
they're
was
they're at a different level.
level, all
Yeah.
completely different level. Yeah, completely different level. And I remember the first time, even the scheme and things that I was kind of playing in, very different from what I did in high school.
Mm,
So that took some kind of transitioning, period for me because, I just, the game speed it was very different than what I was used to. And I remember getting redshirted that year. Remember getting redshirted that year because of I think NCAA was some grades or something. I had to take like a summer class or
yeah.
something of
Yeah.
that nature. So I had redshirted for that. But even then, I don't think I was mentally ready and mentally mature enough to kind of wrap my head around everything that was kind of going on
Sure.
that year. So quickly kind of going through that and then going through everything from a like emotional standpoint and being young. I always tell myself this like, hey, like even when things get hard now, you kind of want to run and kind of just want to just go. They always say, the grass is not always greener on the other
That's right.
side. And so I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna transfer out. I was like, I'm gonna transfer out. Don't know where I'm going. I'm gonna transfer out. And lo and behold, that's kind of how Carson Newman kind of got in the picture. But I kind of went that route.
So let's talk about that because I think that what you just said, I think it applies to not only sports, but I think it applies
Life. Yeah.
to life and
Yeah.
careers in general. Um,
Absolutely.
and if we talk about, because in Memphis, I'm a huge basketball supporter here,
Yeah.
and the NIL and the transfer portal and all that crazy stuff.
Yeah.
But what I have noticed, just from paying attention to different schools and different programs, is when somebody does redshirt for whatever reason, they
Yeah.
usually end up transferring,
Yeah. Yeah.
regardless of the thing. But let's look at that. So, what was your motivation specifically to transfer?
Yeah, I think at the time it was just being, I was young and I mean, and I always tell myself this, if I were to do it all over again, I probably would have never transferred, right? But,
Right.
I think at the time I was very just young and dumb and a lot of outside noise, right? I think
Right.
you kind of get caught up in that. You're blaming the coaches. You're not really
Sure.
looking at yourself and like, hey, like, how, what can I do? What can I improve? How can I get better? I think ultimately, right? You kind of
Yeah.
look at yourself and you're like, hey, like how, but I tell myself to this day, I was like, oh man, I should have stayed at Georgia Southern. It was probably, but it was one of those things where, I did it and I kind of persevered and it worked out, well at the
Right.
end. But yeah, I think, young and dumb and looking at other colleges. I'm like, and kind of like the NIL deal now, right? Hey, kids want more money
Yeah.
here, kids want more money there. Hey, who has the flashiest gear and everything?
Right.
So it was really for the wrong motives. I think when I transferred, I had that emotional kind of breakdown. It was really for the wrong motive. It was nothing, it was nothing like, hey, I want to transfer because of academics or
Right.
pursue something. It was very material, like, oh, I want this jersey, I want more freedom, whatever the heck
Right.
it was at the time. It had nothing to do with prolonging my professional career or looking at academics. No, it was none of that.
But and from what you just said, so many people have done the exact same thing. So
Yeah.
you're not like a special case. Like that's like perfectly normal. What
Thank God.
like so many people have done that.
Yeah.
So you why did you pick Carson Newman? You're at Georgia Southern and you
Yeah.
picked Carson Newman, which we were talking about. I don't know a lot about Carson Newman, even though
Yeah.
it's in
Yeah.
Tennessee. So
Right.
why did you pick that school?
Yeah, it was so we had an upperclassman. I think his name was Dion DeBose. And then we had we had a teammate, his name's Oliver Davis. He was at Georgia Southern
Mhm.
and then he transferred to Carson Newman.
Okay.
And it was a Division II school. They were doing well. And at the time, I think how everything was set up in the NCAA was very different than back then, even though it was a couple of years ago,
Right.
or maybe yeah, a few years ago. It's like, hey, if you transferred to a school, you had to sit out a year and
Right.
do all that stuff. And I was very scared to tell my parents, like, hey, I'm gonna leave this free tuition, full ride scholarship, come back home and try to figure things out. And however that may have looked like,
Oh
they
my God.
probably were not having, I mean, they were not having it. And I was very scared of failing, right? I think, my parents had sacrificed,
Yeah.
whatever for me to kind of further on my education and do that. And I'm, feeling sorry for myself because I want whatever the nicest cleats or whatever per diem, whatever the heck I was chasing then. Um, and so yeah, but yeah, back to the story. Yeah, so yeah, Oliver Davis was at Georgia Southern, transferred to Carson Newman. I think he was there for 2, 3 years, and we kind of met at the back end of his career as he was kind of transitioning out. And yeah, it kind of went from there. And my friend was like, "Hey, Carson Newman is a pretty good school. They're a great Division II schools. They're winning. Seems like a good program. Go for it." And I just on a whim didn't even take a visit there or nothing.
Oh my God.
Think I talked to the coach, which is my position coach, which was Aaron Hutzel at the time. He's like, "Hey man, I see your film. I like it. Let's get you up here." And yeah, went to Carson Newman on a whim, and that's all she wrote.
Well,
That's all she wrote.
things happen for reasons, right? They
Yeah,
they do
yeah,
happen for a reason. And whatever decisions we make, we always have to make the best of what our choices are.
absolutely.
Um, I would say looking at your career at Carson Newman that you actually, really blossomed there.
Yeah.
So, when did you get to start playing football immediately or did you have to sit out?
Yeah, no, I started playing immediately, and I'll tell you a little backstory too. Like, in Carson Newman, I didn't even know like my high school head coach was great friends with the head coach, which was Ken
Right.
Sparks. He later on passed away. Rest in peace to him. But they were great, great friends. And Tony Dungy and my head coach and Ken Sparks
Right.
were like all best friends. So it was this kind of like very surreal kind of deal. But yeah, so yeah, had a great career at Carson Newman, and it was a Christian college. It was a Christian school, Christian college, and in Georgia Southern, I had a very very it was different. It was
It
very
was
different.
different.
It was different. I'll just leave it at that. It was very
It
different.
was different.
We had at Carson Newman, we had to go to chapel and things
Right.
like that. So it was one of those things, kind of looking back at it, even though I wish I would have stayed, there was a lot of good that happened at Carson Newman from a growth standpoint, for because for my dad's a pastor and I'm
Right.
faith-based. And so a lot of things kind of tied into it. And it was very different. The culture, the football, it was different. Like it was a whole 360 in culture, but it ended up working out.
So let's talk about that, you were named team captain at
Yeah.
Carson Newman. Was
Yeah.
that your junior or senior year?
I think I was there, yeah, my junior and senior year. I think I was
Okay.
a team captain probably 2 years there. Yeah.
And did you feel like you deserved it at the time?
Well, you know what I always say, people choose leaders, right? And I think, when you show those traits,
Hmm.
you can always say, hey, I'm up for the challenge, or you can be like, hey,
Right.
go another direction. So I think I always had those leadership qualities within me, even, as even in high school, kind of going through college. And so it was one of those things I kind of, I definitely embraced.
So for you, what did you see as what did leadership look like for you back then?
Yeah, I think it was just leading from the front, right? Leading
Hmm.
from the front, people can trust you, people could lean on you. And as a football team, I mean, you have what, man, 70 to 80 brothers,
Yes.
we
Yes.
call it. So, like I said, the camaraderie and I mean, you're spending, a lot of time with these people. So you really get to know one another. And it's kind of like, you don't want to kind of correlate it to like going to battle and war, but
Right.
that's really what it feels like in a sense. And yeah, I mean, there's a lot of trust built in it, and long life. Some of my long lifetime friends came from football, so there's a lot of trust there.
Was there any moment though during your time at Georgia Southern and at Carson Newman, did you ever like question why you were playing football? Like, was there ever a moment when you're like, am I really meant to do this, or should I just give this up and go do something else?
You know what? I think later on down the line, you kind of have this like, okay, hey, after this, like what's next, right? Because,
Yes.
as the time's ticking, right? I mean, the time's ticking, and
That's right.
you always kind of hear statistic of like, hey, and we used to have guest speakers come in like, hey, like after football, football, you can't play
Right.
football forever. So
Right.
like, what's next, right? You're gonna have guys who are gonna go on and be amazing fathers, amazing husbands, amazing businessmen, or whatever that looked like. So for me, that was always my aspiration. But at the same time, going back home, when you go back home, it's like, hey, NFL, how's that looking? And I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm working on it. I'm working on it, right? I'm working on it. And then you come to a reality like, you know what? I don't know if this thing's gonna happen. I really need to
Right.
figure out a plan B. So but that's the journey within itself.
So, what did you major in at Carson Newman?
Yeah, so funny enough, at Georgia Southern, it's a Christian college, right? So
Mhm.
there's majors that maybe no other school has.
Right.
And I remember like half of my credits, because I think I was every all my teammates at Georgia Southern were sport management majors. And if you were to ask every football player, say, hey, what do you want to go do? Hey, I'm gonna be a sport agent.
That's
Football
right.
doesn't work
That's
out.
right.
And so I was a sport management major. Carson Newman didn't have that. So I said, well, I like business. Let's pick marketing. And I remember I sat in one class in marketing. I was like, I, I understand this stuff. I understand kind of the consumer side of things. I was like, you know
Right.
what? I don't think I want to do marketing. And then I remember I was going out to I went out. It was a very small. Carson was very small. I think it's like 1,200, 2,000, 1,200
Oh
kids. So I went
wow.
from
Yeah.
20,000 kids to 1,200.
Yeah.
Like your professor was like your academic advisor. Like at Carson Newman, I mean at Georgia Southern, like it was a whole like department. I mean, there was so much things that were done for
Right.
you at the Division 1
Right.
level, which
Right.
is very different. So I remember I went to my one of my professors at the time, and I was like, hey, and I hated math. And I was like, hey,
I
what
did too.
major? Yeah. I was like, what major doesn't have math? And he was like, well, general communications. And I was like, well, I like to communicate. So I was like, I like to communicate. Yeah, let's go for that. So yeah, so I chose general communications, and then I went from there. So I got my bachelor's in that.
Okay, so you're a senior at Carson Newman and you graduate. Did you think about going into or preparing for the NFL draft? Did that actually, like, did you really consider
Yeah,
that?
yeah, like I said, very short. I think I had worked out for the New York Giants during my pro day.
Okay.
Yeah, we had a pro day. We had, yeah, the New York Giants. Yeah, we had a pro day and worked out with the New York Giants. And after that, there was a few Canadian teams, and then got an agent laid. And then he was like, "Hey man, I think you're a diamond in the rough." And like, "Hey man, like, you definitely should have, been seen or picked up by somebody, but that didn't happen." And it just got very like I was very, I mean, I was at home back then. I was back, back
Right.
home back then, training, training with his name was Derek Touche, back in Naples. And I'm training with some other guys. I went to Baylor, Bowling Green, and UConn, who kind of had stuff who
Mm-hmm.
kind of had their shot too. But yeah, it like for me coming back home, and I was like, you know what? I don't think I wanna start making like some type of income, some type of way, right?
Right.
And for me, I got tired of the just going to work out, beating my body up, traveling and going to this workout, try out for this workout. And I'm like, I don't think my heart is really in this, but my true passion's always been business.
Right.
So let's go for that. And that's what I did ultimately.
Did you have a moment afterwards
Yeah.
when you gave up the dream of football? Did you
Yeah.
have a moment afterwards where you had regrets that you
I
didn't
think
didn't try more?
You know what? I think the only regret was like, hey, if I stayed at Georgia Southern, things would have been a little different. Things would have been a little different.
Sure.
I guess from a football
From an
standpoint. Yeah, yeah,
exposure,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah. From an
exposure.
exposure standpoint,
Yeah.
yeah. And so that was my only, I guess, regret. But at the same time, I got my degree and things went
Right.
the way it went. And it's one of those things. It's like, hey, it could have went multiple ways, but at the
Sure.
end, I think even in the position that I am now, I'm definitely glad it went the way it went.
Sure.
I don't think I would have had it any other way.
Is there anything about playing football that you do miss?
You know what? It's funny because I get to watch some of my teammates that I played football with, whether it's at Carson Newman or Georgia Southern, who turned pro.
Right.
And like you just love being out there, that locker room feel, the jitters before game day. I mean, there's nothing like it. So I live vicariously through people now.
Sure.
I'm not one of those like, hey, back in my day, hey, I let people have their I let people have their shine, and
Right.
and I'm good with what I'm doing now, right now, within my realm when it comes to a sales professional. But yeah, I think it's just the overall camaraderie and things leading up, the
Right.
games and training and beating your body up. Like I live in Florida, and being outside, I'm like, man, I can't believe I used to practice in this.
Yeah,
It's like, wow. So yeah.
the things we adjust to really quickly,
Right.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I've talked to a lot of the male athletes and women, the female athletes too.
Yeah.
And did you have, like, some of them have talked about the hardest thing for them was how to fulfill that exercise
Yeah.
issue, when they got as an athlete. They were on such a schedule. They
Yeah.
knew when they had to train and how they had to train, and then suddenly they don't have anybody telling them what to
Pivot.
do,
Yeah.
but their body needs
Right.
that. I even had one track lady who actually is an associate AD at Georgia Tech.
Yeah.
She ran track, and she said her body actually went through withdrawals
Yeah.
afterwards because she wasn't, because you're not going to train the same way you did before,
No,
obviously.
no, no.
But did you find that you still needed that exercise regimen, or how did you transfer?
For sure. Yeah, no. I mean, I think some of the things are still built in me today, right? I mean, like even me and my girlfriend, like we worked out at 5 a.m. this morning. Like that's something like my body, like that's
Right.
something I'm very used
Right.
to. Like I'm very like hyped, ready to
Right.
go, and I still have this mentality. I'm wired, so yes, in a way, like your body still crave those things. I don't do all the crazy thing that I used to do. I
Sure.
always tell my girlfriend, hey, I'm just trying to maintain. As long as I don't have
Right.
a belly, I think I'm good, right? I think I'm in good shape. So I think my body still craves some of those things, but you got to be like, hey, man, this is not, you don't have the same body as you did back then. But I think being in shape and staying active is just as good.
I will tell you, I know many people who played sports and even went on to the pro level, and
Yeah.
they will tell you, don't stop exercising, because
Yeah.
once you stop, and the weight in the stomach area for men starts coming on,
Right.
it's really hard
To get it off. Yeah.
to get it off.
Yeah.
And but I mean, I get it. You've gone through all of these years of this hard training and
Oh
you're
yeah.
tired. I think Shaq's even talked about that, about,
Right.
he just kind of let himself go too. He's like,
Right.
I'm
Right.
done. I don't need to do any of this. Um, okay, so let's talk about the business career then. You've graduated, you've given up your NFL dream or whatever it was,
Yeah.
expectations of others maybe.
Right.
What was like, how did you figure out how you were going to get your first job? And
Yeah.
how did that come about?
Yeah, and it's funny that you mentioned that because I have a lot of folks reach out to me all the time on LinkedIn, right? Early career, trying to get
Sure,
started, like, hey,
sure.
senior year, don't have a job lined up. And I remember like I was very scared to go out into the real world. Even with my major, I was like, okay, general communications, what can I do with that? And I remember
See?
Googling things, taking tests. I'm like, okay, I wanted to go into PR or public relations,
Right,
all types of stuff, journalism. I'm like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do these things. And so for me, it was, and so I found um, Enterprise Rent a Car,
mm-hmm.
which was a management trainee program. I had two colleagues who are older than me at the time. Kyle Zeck, he's now a VP at ADP. And I kind of told him like, hey man, I just got out of college, don't know what I was trying to, don't know what to do. And he was like, hey man, I think, I'm at Enterprise Rent a Car right now. I think he was like assistant branch manager running his own in assistant in the rental car space. And yeah, he kind of told me about that. And I was like, well, I don't know. I was like, sign me up. And so, yeah, I was his referral in a sense, and I kind of got on board that way. He told me about the company, interviewed, and went through that whole process, and ended up getting my first big boy corporate job.
Right.
Probably 8, 9 months later after college. And yeah, so it was kind of took that route and went up from there.
Okay, so let me ask you this. At that time, what do you think your greatest strength was?
Yeah, I was very much a self-starter, very much a
Okay.
self-starter, and the way enterprise was, or just the, I guess, the career path.
Mhm.
And even and I was 1 foot in, 1 foot out still, right? I
Right.
was at
Right.
Enterprise doing that. I was like, hey, if I get called for, whatever team, I may be out of here. I used to always kind of joke around. I was trying to joke around with my colleagues back then.
Sure.
I was
Sure.
like, hey man, I don't know how much longer I'm gonna be here, but if I do get a call, I'm not going to be here much longer. But but yeah, I think my great strength was just being a self-starter and being able to apply anything, like, and I was coachable. I was coachable.
Right.
I've always been coachable. So if you tell me something, I'm gonna go apply it right away and
Right.
get some kind of result out of it. And yeah, so that's what kind of made me successful throughout my career with Enterprise, being there for 6.5 years and 8 promotions. That was kind of just my recipe for it all, being a self-starter and being coachable.
So you stay there for 6.5 years,
Yeah.
and it's interesting. The episode before yours is
Yeah.
with the head coach, women's basketball at Post University,
Yeah.
and she was, because I actually recorded that this morning
Yeah.
for those that are watching this later. She actually talked about how Enterprise was giving some of her players
Yeah.
internships.
Wow. Yeah.
So it's very much a coincidence. I can't talk right now. It's very much a coincidence,
Right.
that you're having that same conversation. What do you think those 6.5 years taught you about yourself?
Yeah. I mean, the way enterprise is structured, I mean, there's a lot of autonomy because you're running your own business, right? I
Right.
always tell people it's like you're getting an MBA, a hands-on MBA. And so there's a lot of things I learned about not only business, but really about myself, right?
Sure.
Even being a multicultural, you got to deal with different people. You're working within a team environment.
Yes.
Some of the same things that I learned in football and sports and being a
Right.
captain, those are the same kind of characteristics that I was able to kind of corral around my team and implement around my team and have successful teams throughout my career. And, definitely the leadership aspect and being able to work along with people, being able to, um, you know, um, you know, um, fill people's cup and develop
Right.
them, train them, and just being an overall good steward within your community, right? I mean, I think, enterprise, I mean, of course it's a national brand, but you're in local communities, you're helping out
Yes.
people. And so there's a lot of good that comes within that. So I think enterprise really taught me a lot. And it really got a lot out of me too, because it challenges you, right? Just like kind
Sure
of
it does.
football and sports challenges you, like, hey, things are not going to go your way. I
No.
remember there was times like, even though I tell you 6.5 years, 8 promotions, I'm like, oh my God, that looks great. But I got told no so many
Sure.
times, and that's life. And that's life. And you get to learn that, you get to pivot, you get to work on your strength, you get to work on your weaknesses and get better. And so it really taught me a lot of things about myself that life had taught me. And
Right.
so it really paid dividends down the road.
And for jobs like that, you're very front facing. So you're
Yeah,
dealing with customers
100%.
in stressful times of their life because there's
100%. Yeah.
nothing more stressful than getting off a plane and trying to go get a rental car,
Medical. Yeah.
and in the middle of the night or whatever. And so I think, that's the best training ground possible to learn how to pivot quickly and navigate and just, pull those britches up and do
Yeah,
what's got to be done. Um,
absolutely.
so when did you decide that that was enough and you wanted to go a different direction or you wanted to move on?
Yeah, yes. 6.5 years in, I kind of looked at the trajectory of my career, and it was great. I tell people like, and I always co-sign enterprise. That's one of probably the best thing that happened to me throughout my professional career. But at the end of the day, anybody would tell you, whether it's senior leadership, nobody goes to school to rent cars. Nobody goes, you
Right.
can't go to school to rent cars. But
But
within that,
somebody's got to
but
do it.
yeah, somebody's got to do it, right? And it teaches you a lot about leadership, running your own business. And I remember I kind of looked at my career. I was like, hey, you know what? I've 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 done this. It's kind of like a football career. You look at
Hmm.
it, you take a step back, you're like, hey, I had a great career here. And some people will stay and retire and do the Tom Brady and retire when they're 40,
Right.
and some people will transition.
Right.
will transition. I was like, you know what? I don't think I want to retire here when I'm 50, 60. I want to do something else and find fulfillment in something else. And took a 4 month sabbatical, try to figure things out. Worked for a company called Monroe for a little bit, and then I kind of pivoted into medical sales at the end, and I was really to find some really fulfillment and joy within what I do now.
So tell me, what is it about sales? Because for me, I think I'm horrible at sales. Okay.
Yeah,
Like I don't know. I don't like asking people to buy
yeah,
stuff,
right,
but there are people that excel at it, obviously,
right.
because I buy stuff, right?
Yeah,
But what for you, what was it about sales that really just put you in the right spot to
yeah,
to really excel?
yeah, no, and that's a great question. I always tell people like they're in sales in one way or another. They just don't know
Sure
it
they
yet.
are. You're exactly
But
right.
yeah, I mean, to me, sales is it's very basic and go back to just fundamentals. It's all about finding a solution to a problem. To a
Right.
problem. If somebody has a problem, I mean, it's not going to work for everyone, right? You got to find
Right.
your ideal customer, and you got to find out, hey, what the need is, find the pain point, and be able to kind of solve that. It's kind of like reverse engineering in a way,
Sure.
but everybody needs something. So
Hmm.
it's really about aligning with that person needs and wants, and be able to come up with a solution or product or service, and to kind of fulfill that need. So, but sales, it's always it's. I'm a problem solver. I'm a problem
Right.
solver. I love solving things. Things keep me up. If I'm the kind of guy. If something's broken, I want to fix it. I want to
Hmm.
fix it, and I'm not gonna leave till I fix it. So that's kind of how I'm wired as a self-starter. So that's kind of just ingrained in me, and I like to fix things and really come up. I like to stress myself out. I like to stress myself out, so to speak. But it's good. I don't think there's a better profession out there. For me at least, for me, and I can say that humbly, but I think it's one of the greatest professions out there.
You talk about finding that problem, finding the person that needs what you have to sell.
Yeah.
And I think that there are people out there that I think they get uncomfortable around sales because they're trying to sell to everybody.
Everything. Yeah.
And unfortunately, you're picking the people that maybe you think are easiest to sell to, and they're
Right.
not wanting what you have to sell, and it
Correct.
discourages people, right?
Right.
And I think it's like it's kind of the same way, because I taught job search in Houston for about 5 years, and I think it's the same thing for people for looking for jobs. They want to take any job that's offered to them,
Right.
and it's not the best job for them, you know,
Yeah.
and then they feel personally, not attacked, but they feel like, oh, there's something wrong with me if you didn't offer me the job, when it's
Right.
just you're not the fit for the
Right. Yeah.
job.
You're not the right fit. Yeah. You're not the
Right.
right. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's all about identifying whether you're in sales or you're just looking for a job or something. It's all about identifying who needs what you have to
Yeah.
offer, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Because we are products,
For sure. For sure.
we're selling ourselves whether we're actually selling it or not. And that, for me,
Right.
that took me a while to figure that out.
Yeah.
Um, but I think that, the training that you had at Enterprise, I think was really good. What
Yeah.
is something, if you look back at your college career, what
Yeah.
is something that you wished you'd had then that would have helped you navigate the job force much easier after college?
Yeah. I think it's all about having a community. I think that helps a ton, right? I think my parents didn't leave me with a business to just go out and run, right? I didn't wasn't born with a silver spoon. I didn't have any connections or what may have, I've kind of built it up over time now, but I didn't really know what I wanted to do. Like nobody in my family, I could be like, hey, I want to do this. Do you know anybody? Or like, hey, I want some real life experience in this. I'll work for free. So there really wasn't none of that. And I remember going to Carson Newman and I was like, hey, can I get plugged? Can I, like the alma mater and like and I don't know what office I went to and I was like, hey, like I want to reach out to like your alumni base or whatever. I
Right.
just trying to find somebody who was within my major and trying to reach out to people. This kid, reaching out to random people, emailing like, hey, this is my resume. Give me a shot at this or whatever that had looked like. But yeah, I think going back then, it was like, hey, it's all about having a community, right? And I think, now there's LinkedIn, and I don't know if LinkedIn was around back then. Maybe it was, maybe it
It
wasn't.
was, but it was more like people just went and put their resumes on there.
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
it was in the past 10 years that it really just started changing a great deal to
for
be
sure.
for everyone. Yeah.
Right. So, like I said, I think it was all about having a community, and I think anytime you have a community of people, kind of, like LinkedIn's right, it's a great platform. You could connect with
Yes.
anyone, and you could align with anyone. I think as their message resonate with yours. So I think I would say community is the biggest for sure.
I always like to get that perspective from people, because one thing I've realized is it's easy. Hindsight's always better. Your whatever the slogan is. Hindsight's 2020.
2020, yeah,
It's always easier to look back and go, oh, I should have done this, this, and this. But at the
right,
time, you're in it. You
right.
know. Um, and so yeah, I get that. What do you see as your definition of success today?
Yeah, I think back then, if you would have told me, it would have been probably surrounded by materialistic things like
Which
cars,
which a lot of
yeah,
people say,
which,
yes.
yeah. But I think ultimately it comes down to just really just happiness. I think
It
happiness,
does.
within yourself, finding fulfillment in what you do. But I think, and I think it's a double-edged sword because you have to get there first, right? I think,
Right.
hey, I've had great career, I've had whatever I've made X amount, I feel, whatever the case, all the materialistic things that come with success. I think once you feel it, you kind of have to pull yourself back. Like, okay, hey, what really makes me happy? Because this is what now I'm here. It's really not that fulfilling to me. So I
Right.
think it's all about happiness and however that looks like to you and looks different from to
Sure.
everyone. I think I've managed people um and in leadership, not everybody's moved by money. Some people are moved by just a simple recognition. Some people are moved
Yes.
by awards or whatever the case may be. So whatever happiness looks like to someone, I think that's the way you define success.
So let's talk about your days as a football player. What do you think that football, what's something that football taught you that still shapes how you show up every day now?
Yeah. I think it's just mental toughness. I think just having the mental toughness and the just to be able to kind of push forward, right? I
Right.
think there's a lot of times that, if I wasn't mentally strong, and probably has to do a lot of my upbringing too, right? Just being grown up as a first generation
Sure.
kid in Haiti and, growing up in poverty and things like that. So I think a lot of these things kind of pushes me to get over that hump, right? Whatever that
Right.
looked like to somebody, right? And people are, I always tell people, anytime I interviewed somebody like in my past at Enterprise or they'll say, hey, look, I work hard, right? I work hard, but everybody's work hard is very different.
Yes.
Yeah, like you're always gonna find someone that works harder than the next person, right? So what does really working hard looks like? So, I think for me, it's really having that mindset that like, hey, like just that mental toughness that, hey, like I'm not gonna quit. I'm gonna keep going. I'm gonna give it all until I get the result that I'm looking for.
So, if you could describe yourself in one sentence, who you are today,
Yeah.
how would you describe yourself?
Wow, that's a great question. That is really a great question. I always say myself, I'm very just positive and very upbeat. Like
Right.
I'm the guy you could just lean on and trust. Like I tell people that and that it's not something that you always want to advertise, but I think as somebody as if someone gets to know me and for truly me, even my customers, that's something that I try to kind of exude.
Right.
Trust is big to me and be able to just show up, right? Show up, get the job done. Whether that was in football and just personal life or just business. I think those are the things that, I would kind of want to kind of be known for sure.
What do you think your greatest strength is today?
Wow. I think positivity. I think I'm always positive. I'm always
But
positive
but
and
but I
optimistic.
think that's great.
Yeah.
I feel the same way. I try to be very positive every day.
Yeah.
There's so many people that are not positive,
Yeah.
and it just is exhausting. But yeah, okay. So where can everybody connect with you on social line on social
Yeah,
online?
yeah, yeah. No, LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn. I think
Yes,
I
you
post
are.
around, yeah,
Yes,
I
you
think I
are.
post 7:30 Monday through Friday. So yeah, you could find me on LinkedIn. It's Emmanuel Orange. My name is Emmanuel. Orange like the color. I always have to tell people that because
Yeah.
they'll butcher that. But yeah, it's orange like the color. But yeah, so yeah, that's where you could find me. If you type in Emmanuel Orange, you'll definitely find me on LinkedIn for sure.
I'll put the link to your LinkedIn profile.
Yep.
I'll put it in the show notes and on the YouTube video. I always love to ask this question, so I'm going to change it up for you just a little bit.
Okay.
Normally, I say if you could go back and ask your 9-year-old self, but I'm going to change it to 8 years old
Yeah.
because that's when you came over. So what would you go back and tell 8-year-old Emmanuel? What
Yeah.
advice would you give him? Or give yourself?
Wow. That's
What
a great
advice
question.
would you give yourself?
Wow, that's a great question. I think you just put me in a deep thought there.
Well, and the lady from Post, she also said the same thing. She's like, "Wow, I've
Yeah,
never been asked."
yeah. Yeah, wow, what would I tell myself? I mean, keep going. I think keep going. I think progression.
That's good.
Yeah, I mean, I love the idea of just progressing through life and not just being stuck.
Right.
So, if anything, just keep going, try everything, do everything, but just keep going. I think as long you're not, settling and you're not, yeah, you're just not staying in one place doing the same old thing. But I think progression, I think I'll tell myself to keep going and just keep progressing throughout life.
No, I get that. Okay, so I'm going to give you a few flash fire questions.
Yeah.
Number one, favorite Haitian dish.
Wow. It has to be so Zili Soswa and Lalo. So it's basically white rice, black pureed beans, and it's kind of like spinach type of like vegetable type of
Oh,
deal.
okay.
It's very
Okay.
delicious. I had it yesterday, so
Okay.
it's very delicious.
That sounds good. Are
Yeah.
you, I think I already know the answer to this one. Are you an early riser or a night owl?
Early riser. Early
Okay.
riser for sure.
Okay. Dream vacation destination that you haven't been to yet.
Oh, I think the Maldives.
Oh,
The
yes.
Maldives.
Yes.
Maldives. Yeah.
Yes.
We'll put that on there.
Okay, last
Sure.
movie you watched.
Oh, movie I watched. Hmm. You know what? I just got into movie. Wow, what's the last movie I watched? Me and my girlfriend now watch a lot of movies. She's very much into like the movie theater, going into. I keep. She'll probably if she, when she listens to this, she'll probably. Yeah, the last
It's
movie I
a
probably watched was with her, and I don't even. We've watched a lot of shows lately, and not
okay.
even ones come to mind.
Okay.
That
Hey,
is bad. That
hey,
is
I've been
bad.
there too. Like I've forgotten people's names when I'm
Wow.
talking. Um,
Yeah.
is there a movie that you're I maybe I should just stop with the question. Is there a movie you're looking forward to seeing?
You know what? I'll give you one just because she kind of sent it to me the other. It's like with Brad Pitt, this
Yes,
F1 type of
F1.
race. Yeah,
F1. And
yeah,
yes.
this F1 movie. So she just sent that to me the other day. She's like, "Hey, what do you think about this?" And I was like,
Yes, y'all need to go
yeah,
see it. I
yeah,
haven't
so,
I'm so
yeah."
excited about it. I'm
Okay,
so
so I'll go
excited
now.
about it.
So yeah, so I'll go on behalf. Well, I'll definitely go with her now, and yeah, I think she'll be happy. I think she'll be happy. I kind of told her like I don't know, but
Yeah,
now
yeah, you need to
I'll
go.
have to go. I'll have to go.
Okay, the last question. What's one thing you're currently obsessed with that has nothing to do with work?
Oh, I think that man, I feel like everything revolves around work. Right now, I'm on this like health kick,
Mm,
this health kick, and really pushing my bodies to do different things, just in a different nutritional way. So
right.
right now, it's all about this health and wellness kick, and kind of eating clean and eating right and
Yeah.
taking care of your health. So right now, that's kind of the journey that I'm on is
Hey.
the health. I don't want to say I'm a vegan, full-blooded vegan, but I'm teetering that teetering that right now.
No, no. I think that's an excellent one. Truly, I think we could all do a little bit more, being a little bit more healthy. Okay,
Absolutely.
so there you have it. That wraps up today's show. Emmanuel, thank you so much for jumping on here and doing this. And we had never met other than I just sent you a message. And
All good.
sometimes, I always tell people that I don't think we as individuals sit around for an hour and
Yeah.
intently have a conversation with one person.
Right.
And I think that you're going to be, I think, episode number 73 or 74. I
Wow.
think that that's what I enjoyed the most out of these is
Yeah.
just having, just really having a one on one conversation with someone
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
no other distractions,
Right.
because I think that's very rare these days. But thank you so much for doing this. I so appreciate it.
Of course. No, no, definitely pleasure connecting and having me on. It was definitely a great pleasure to get on here and share my story.
Absolutely. Thank you all for watching and listening, especially if you've made it all the way to this part of the show. I appreciate all your support. Another reminder to subscribe to the show wherever you listen or watch. My mantra is like, share, and review. Follow us on social media at 5THQRT Podcast. Until next time, remember, change is our ally and it paves the way for greatness. Stay inspired. Have a great rest of the week.